Secrets hidden in the basement. Leo, a college student desperate to find a job during his winter break, stumbled upon a strange ad on Craigslist. The ad lacked details, but the salary was too good to pass up for a simple housekeeping job at the home of an elderly woman named Mrs. Donovan. At the end of the ad, there was a phone number. An elderly woman answered the call and gave him an address to visit the next day. The next day, Leo arrived at Mrs. Donovan's house, a peculiar old wooden house surrounded by a vast garden of towering red roses. Their charcoal black stems stood out against the vibrant petals. Mrs. Donovan warmly welcomed him, an elderly woman with sharp gray eyes and an air of mystery. She gave him a tour of the large house, filled with books on botany and strange plants. Her library was vast, and there was something about those books that made him feel uneasy. Then she led Leo out to the garden, full of strange plants, especially the roses he had noticed earlier. She began praising the roses as the work of her life and gave him detailed instructions on how to care for the garden. Inside, she offered Leo a cup of coffee and instructed him on some tasks around the house while she was out. She said,
"Everything must be cared for as it is when I leave. Just tend to the plants. One rule, don't go into the basement."
At first, Leo found her expression a bit odd, though nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Many people have restrictions on certain rooms in their homes. His curiosity was piqued, but soon set aside. After Mrs. Donovan left, he spent the next few hours tending to the plants, ensuring each was watered and cared for properly. Leo took a deep breath and noticed something odd. The scent of the flowers was overpowering, almost metallic. Moreover, the rose petals were much thicker than a typical rose. Just then, a bee buzzed past Leo's head, startling him as he grabbed a rose. The red petals crumbled in his hand, but something was strange. His hand felt slick and sticky. Leo opened his palm. A thick red liquid oozed from the broken petals, staining his hand. It was unlike any flower Leo had ever seen. It looked like blood. Shuddering, Leo rushed back inside to wash his hands. Suddenly, he heard an echoing noise from the basement. It grew louder, like a cry for help. Despite Mrs. Donovan's strict instructions, curiosity and concern drove Leo to the basement door. He descended the stairs, the faint light from his phone illuminating a metal door hidden at the end of the hallway. A faint whimper sent chills down his spine. Something was terribly wrong behind that door. With trembling hands, he pushed the door open, revealing a dimly lit room. Iron cages lined the walls. From one of them, he heard a faint plea for help.
"Help me."
Then he saw her, a young woman curled up in the corner of a cage, her pale face covered in scratches, her body showing signs of severe malnutrition. Leo was shocked and horrified. The woman explained that Mrs. Donovan had kept her imprisoned and fed her body to her monstrous plants. Just as he began planning her rescue, he heard the front door open. Mrs. Donovan had returned unexpectedly. As she entered, dragging a large suitcase behind her, Leo tried to remain calm, pretending everything was normal. She squinted, tilting her head as she studied him.
"You look pale. Are you okay?"
Mrs. Donovan's smile vanished. Her gaze shifted toward the basement door, then back to Leo.
"You went somewhere you shouldn't have, didn't you?"
Mrs. Donovan suddenly grabbed a pruning knife from her suitcase and slashed at Leo. He dodged, the blade striking wood and splintering it. Leo shoved a chair forward, knocking her off balance, then sprinted toward the basement, slamming the door behind him and locking it with a rusty latch. Leo reached for his phone but realized it was missing. Panic surged within him. Then he remembered the landline phone in the kitchen. He needed to get there without being caught by Mrs. Donovan. Leo spotted a broom and an old coat in the corner of the basement. Quickly, he propped the broom against the wall, draped the coat over it to mimic a human figure, then grabbed a pipe from the floor and hurled it against the wall to create a loud noise. The distraction worked. As she stormed through the door, it gave Leo just enough time to slip into the kitchen. He dashed to the phone, grabbed the landline, and dialed 911 with trembling hands. She realized and quickly returned. Leo grabbed a pan from the counter and struck her arm, causing the knife to drop to the floor.
Help! She's trying to kill me.
Leo screamed into the phone, his voice desperate. Leo dodged, grabbed a bottle of fertilizer from the counter, and hurled it into her face. The powder temporarily blinded her, giving Leo a chance to grab the knife and point it at her. Her wild grin sent shivers down his spine. The front door burst open, and police stormed in. Mrs. Donovan lunged desperately at Leo, but the officers tackled her to the ground and restrained her. Shortly after, her garden was destroyed and burned to ashes by authorities. They uncovered the horrifying truth about Mrs. Donovan's experiments with carnivorous plants that thrived on blood and human flesh. The truth about her dark experiments was revealed. She was sent to a mental institution where she would spend the rest of her life. This nightmare was something Leo would never forget. The guest at midnight. A few years ago, Jacob applied for a temporary job at a local gas station. He planned to move in 6 months, so he couldn't get a long-term job, but he still needed to make some cash beforehand. The job paid well enough to convince Jacob to take the night shift. All he had to do was man the register and occasionally handle routine maintenance. It was during his 4th month on the job. Most nights were uneventful, but there was one particular customer that stood out to Jacob. His name was Dave. He was a man in his early 40s who regularly stopped by the gas station around 1 or 2 a.m. every night. He would walk in and buy random things, sometimes household items, food, or tools. Occasionally, the things he purchased seemed oddly specific. One night, as usual, at 1 a.m., Dave entered the gas station. There were no other customers, just Jacob, sitting at the counter, waiting for him to walk in. Jacob immediately sensed something was off. Dave looked disheveled, sweating, and frantically searching for something. When he found it a master lock, the kind used for securing bikes, he rushed to the counter and tossed it down for checkout. Dave's strange behavior only made Jacob more curious.
Dave, did you get a new bike?
But Dave didn't even look at him, hastily pulling out cash instead. The night passed, and then several days did too. Jacob hadn't seen Dave in nearly a week, which was strange, considering Dave usually came in every night. It wasn't until Jacob's 4th shift that he saw Dave again. That night, a light drizzle fell outside. As usual, Dave stepped into the store. But this time, he rushed inside, muttering something inaudible. He looked agitated, and Jacob felt an unsettling sense of unease. His gut told him something was wrong. Then, a loud noise came from outside. The only thing there was Dave's car. The sound was sharp, like someone kicking the door from the inside. A second later, Jacob turned back to Dave. He was no longer in a rush. Instead, he stood in the aisle, staring directly at Jacob, like he had just realized something Jacob wasn't supposed to know. After that night, after seeing Dave's car and hearing that strange noise, Jacob knew he couldn't just sit still. He checked the gas station's security cameras, trying to figure out what Dave had been doing on his previous visits. Jacob recalled the items Dave had bought: rope, locks, duct tape. When put together, they all seemed to serve a sinister purpose. Determined not to let this go, Jacob decided to follow Dave. After tracking Dave's car several times, Jacob discovered that he frequently drove to a narrow forest road leading to an abandoned cabin near town. Choosing not to call the police just yet, Jacob drove there himself, bringing a flashlight and a folding knife for protection. As he neared the cabin, Jacob turned off his car's lights and stepped into the forest. Peering through a window, he saw Dave holding a knife, mumbling something to a woman tied to a chair. Jacob silently tried to find a way inside, but he accidentally kicked a log nearby, alerting Dave. He quickly ducked behind a pile of firewood, but Jacob didn't realize Dave had already spotted him. Before he knew it, Dave was right behind him, eyes wild, shouting,
"What the hell are you doing here?"
With no other choice, Jacob lunged at him, initiating a violent struggle. Dave swung his knife at Jacob, but he dodged and shoved him against the wall. The tied-up woman screamed, desperately trying to free herself. Distracted by her cries, Jacob was caught off guard as Dave landed a powerful punch, knocking him to the ground. As Dave charged forward to stab him, Jacob grabbed a nearby wooden plank and smashed it against Dave's head, making him stumble and drop the knife. But things weren't over yet. In the struggle, Dave tried to reach for the knife, but Jacob shoved him backward. He fell into an abandoned pit just outside the cabin. From above, Jacob watched as Dave lay motionless, his breaths growing weaker. Jacob freed the woman, and together they left, abandoning Dave to his fate in the darkness. His reckoning would come soon enough. The dark conspiracy of the stranger. In 2016, Ali's parents had just moved to the West Coast, and she was driving there to visit them. Most of the journey was desolate, with only a few gas stations scattered along the long highway at certain intervals. As she continued her drive, her car suddenly showed signs of trouble. The fuel light started blinking, signaling a problem. Ali wasn't very knowledgeable about cars, and given the unreliable nature of her old vehicle, she wasn't surprised, but she was definitely worried. She spotted a gas station about 30 miles ahead and decided to keep driving. However, before she could reach it, her car completely broke down, leaving her stranded on the side of the road. With no cell service, Ali had no choice but to hitchhike, something she never thought she'd have to do. Ali stood by the roadside, just waiting. Every 15 minutes or so, a car would pass by, but none stopped. This went on for hours, probably until 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. After waiting for hours in the darkness, she finally saw the headlights of a pickup truck approaching. She assumed it would pass by like all the others, but to her surprise, it slowed down and pulled over. The truck stopped, and the driver was a gaunt man with a long, hollowed face and long black hair that looked slightly unkempt.
"Need a ride?"
he asked cheerfully, flashing a wide grin. Something about him made Ali deeply uncomfortable, but exhausted and desperate. She knew this might be her only chance to get out of there. So, she got into the back seat. As they drove, Ali felt it would be awkward not to make small talk. But before she could say anything, the man spoke first, introducing himself as Dave and explaining that he was just driving along the highway for fun. That struck Ali as strange. Ali was surprised that he hadn't even asked why she needed a ride. Then, cutting off her train of thought, he glanced at her in the mirror.
"You don't have a weapon on you, right? Just making sure I'm safe."
The question seemed odd, but Ali brushed it off. She watched the road pass by, and for the next 10 minutes, neither of them spoke. Her fear grew as they veered off the main highway onto a dirt road. As the truck rumbled down the rough path, a dilapidated farmhouse came into view. Suddenly, the truck came to a halt, and the man immediately opened his door and jumped out. His movements were practiced, too smooth, too confident. Ali flung the door open and bolted toward the tree line while he ran around the truck, chasing after her from behind. But as she ran deeper into the forest, it became so dark that she could only hear his footsteps. She could no longer see him. Ali's heart pounded as she held her breath, hiding behind the trees, trying not to be found. His footsteps grew closer. His eerie voice repeated over and over, taunting her.
Come back. I'll take you where you need to go. I'm not trying to scare you.
That made it even worse, especially since she could no longer hear his footsteps. Ali knew she needed to find her way back to the road, so she quietly moved in the direction she hoped was right. As she stumbled deeper through the forest, she pulled out her phone and dimmed the screen. Miraculously, somehow, she had service. At that moment, Ali nearly cried from relief. She called 911 and asked them to trace her call so they could locate her. Luckily, Ali staggered back onto the main road, exhausted and terrified. Just as she thought she had reached safety, she saw 2 police officers waiting there. The officers searched the house and confirmed that it had been abandoned for years. However, there was no sign of the man or his truck. A few weeks later, at home, Ali started researching and found a local crime blog about disappearances along that same highway. She froze as she saw his face. He was the prime suspect. Authorities had arrested him after linking him to several other disappearances. Though Ali was safe, the experience haunted her. But she felt relieved she had escaped him. The woman under the bed. Aisha, a 16-year-old girl, had to share a room with her sister, Rai, due to their large family. Like many siblings, they often had disagreements. Their most frequent fight was over ownership of their shared room's key. Each day, one of them would hold on to it. One evening, after a silly argument, Aisha stormed off to the kitchen to cool down. As usual, Rai locked the room behind her, a typical move. When she finally returned, she found the door locked, just as expected. Rai had vented her frustration by locking her out. But as she banged on the door, demanding Rai to open it, her sister yelled from downstairs.
Stop yelling. It's 1 a.m.
Aisha turned back to the door, utterly confused. If Rai was downstairs, then who was inside their room? She twisted the doorknob once more, and this time, the door swung open. The room was pitch dark, with the window wide open. Moonlight streamed in, casting an eerie glow as the thin white curtains swayed hauntingly in the wind. Something about the atmosphere made Aisha hesitate before stepping inside. She reached for the light switch, but before she could turn it on, her eyes landed on Rai's bed and she saw something horrifying. She looked toward the bunk bed. The darkness beneath it was thick, and from its shadows, a pale, bony hand with visible veins rested motionless on the floor, as if waiting for something. Someone was under the bed. Aisha's breath caught in her throat. It took her a few seconds to summon the courage to speak.
Who's there?
But the hand remained still, unmoving. She spoke again, louder this time.
If you don't come out, I'm calling the police.
That's when she heard a shrill giggle, a woman's voice. The hand slowly began to move, and a woman dressed in white crawled out from under the bed. Half of her face was scarred from burns, and she had no hair. Her bloodshot eyes glowed as she stood motionless in the room, like a terrifying statue. She began laughing strangely, humming a lullaby in a haunting, chilling tone. Aisha, terrified and unable to stay any longer, bolted out of the room, screaming for help. Gasping for breath, she told her family what she had seen, but most of them were skeptical. Still, her father grabbed a baseball bat and went back with her to check the room. When they returned to Aisha's room, it was empty. The window was still wide open. The woman was gone. But when they turned the lights back on, they saw muddy footprints stretching from the window to the bed. Aisha's father peered out the window. His face went pale as he saw a shadowy figure climbing down the drain pipe and vanishing into the darkness of the street. The family was left in shock and confusion, unsure of what they had just witnessed. Though there were no clear answers, Aisha remained haunted by a deep, lingering fear. For weeks, Aisha tried to convince herself that the woman under the bed was just an intruder. But the truth revealed itself in the most unexpected way. Weeks later, while cleaning out old belongings in the attic with her father, Aisha found an old family photo taken years ago. But standing faintly in the background was her, the woman from that night. Her father snatched the photo, gripping it so tightly that the edges crumpled.
Where did you find this?
He asked before finally revealing the truth. The woman had once been their housemaid many years ago, working for them for a long time. But one day, she disappeared without a trace, leaving no explanation, and the family never spoke of her again. And yet, after all these years, she had returned. Not to harm them, but for what reason? That question loomed over Aisha's mind. Her father refused to say anything more and started burning the photo, as if erasing any trace of the woman's existence. To this day, she still cannot forget the bloodshot eyes staring at her from under the bed. Horror menu at fast food store. Alex was working the third shift at a local Wendy's to pay for his tuition. The job was nothing special, just the occasional late-night customer, making things a little more interesting. That night, he spent most of his shift sweeping and wiping down counters. Just as he thought he was going to die of boredom, a car pulled up to the drive-through speaker. Alex set down his rag, put on his headset, and said,
Welcome to Wendy's. What can I get for you?
The car pulled up to the pickup window, and the order was unusually large, 50 chicken nuggets and 10 double cheeseburgers. Alex entered the order into the computer, feeling sorry for his coworker, Brad, who was the only cook on shift. Brad would have to make all of that food by himself. Alex asked if he wanted anything else, but the man remained silent and simply drove up to the window. A pickup truck. The man's vehicle was white, coated in a thick layer of grime on the windshield and windows, with patches of rust and dents. As the driver's window rolled down, Alex finally saw him. The man was unsettling. He had pale, sunken eyes with dark purple circles underneath. He was sweating and looked restless. He gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles were white. Strange scars ran down his arms, as if something had gnawed on his limbs. Alex tried not to stare and opened the window. A horrific stench wafted out from the truck, a smell like a rotting swamp. The man said nothing. He simply handed Alex a crumpled $50 bill. Alex took the money, trying to remain calm despite the man's scarred arms and the truck's overwhelming stench. One thing Alex had learned working in fast food was to avoid conflict at all costs. He handed the man his change and directed him to the designated waiting spot for large orders. Alex told him he'd bring the food out when it was ready, but the man just stared at him with those hollow eyes. Then, the man muttered something repeatedly. Sandy is so hungry. Alex quickly told him the food would be ready soon and shut the window. But the man didn't move. He didn't park where Alex had directed him. Alex waited for Brad to start passing the food through the window. But after 5 minutes, Brad had only prepared 20 nuggets and 2 burgers. After a few minutes of waiting, he started knocking on the window, demanding his food. When Alex opened the window to check, the man insisted, Sandy won't wait any longer. Alex could only nod, promising to hurry before quickly shutting the window. Less than 2 minutes passed before he knocked again. This time, he reached out, grabbed Alex by the collar, and snarled,
Sandy won't wait anymore. Do you want me to feed you to her?
Panicked, Alex shoved him away and demanded he leave. The man growled, jumped into his truck, and sped off into the night. About half an hour passed with no customers, so Alex and Brad sat in the kitchen, chatting. Suddenly, in the middle of their conversation, the power in the store cut out, plunging the kitchen into darkness. Alex and Brad froze, turning toward the noise. He had come back. He stood at the window, no longer in his truck, this time clutching a large sack against his chest. His pale lips curled into a sickening smile. Then, to Alex's horror, he pushed open the window.
Sandy needs to eat.
Brad lunged toward the window in rage. The man opened the sack and dumped its contents into the store. Something heavy and wet hit the floor with a sickening sound. Alex squinted, trying to make sense of it. The horrific sound sent chills down Alex's spine. He pulled his phone from his pocket and turned on the flashlight. What he saw would haunt him forever. It was an alligator. It lunged forward and clamped its jaws around Brad's ankle. Brad screamed in agony. The lunatic at the window giggled. "Sandy's hungry. Sandy's hungry," he repeated over and over. Alex grabbed a cast iron pan and swung it with all his strength at the alligator. It screeched and backed off for a moment. In a frenzy, Alex yanked Brad into the kitchen and slammed the door shut behind them. He dialed 911 as they waited in terror, the sound of claws scraping against the floor and the lunatic's distorted mumblings echoing outside. After 10 agonizing minutes, the police arrived and arrested the man. Yet he still wore that deranged, inexplicable grin. Animal control arrived a few minutes later, sedated the alligator, and transported it to a wildlife sanctuary. The echo of the forgotten sonata. After capturing the masked thief on the highway, Nick couldn't shake the unease in his mind. The petty thief's words echoed in his memory. The real monster isn't dumb enough to get caught. He started noticing inconsistencies. A house with windows perpetually shut. A place he often passed but never saw anyone. Upon investigation, he realized it was his cousin Derek's house, who lived on the town's outskirts. Derek had always been approachable, someone Nick trusted. But during a casual visit to Derek's house, Nick sensed something was off. Derek's home was cozy, adorned with old family photos, and faintly smelled of wood. While chatting over coffee, Nick's sharp detective instincts picked up on strange details. Scratches on the floor near a cabinet, an unusual lock on the basement door, and a faint metallic scent in the air. While Derek excused himself to take a call, Nick wandered through the living room, his curiosity growing. A framed photo on the mantel caught his attention. It was a picture of Derek standing with a group of locals, including a man reported missing months ago. That night, Nick pretended to leave but parked his truck nearby, watching. Using his lock-picking skills, Nick snuck around the back and gently opened the door. Nick opened the basement door and descended the stairs. The stench hit him first, a nauseating mix of damp earth and decay. The dim light from a single bulb revealed a chilling scene. Rows of Polaroids were pinned to the walls, some showing missing persons from case files, all in varying states of fear and distress. A bloodied tarp covered something large on the floor. Nearby were necklaces, wallets, and torn jackets scattered carelessly. The basement resembled something out of a nightmare. Rows of industrial freezers lined the walls, each labeled with dates and names. A workbench was filled with surgical tools, knives meticulously arranged. As Nick turned to leave, he heard footsteps above. Derek's voice rang out, calm but chilling.
You weren't supposed to see this, Nick.
Derek appeared at the top of the stairs, holding a shotgun, his face devoid of its usual warmth. He revealed his twisted reasoning, claiming he was protecting the town by ensuring no locals came to harm. Knowing he couldn't reach his concealed weapon, Nick noticed a toolbox on a nearby shelf. Inside, he spotted a flashlight with a cracked lens and a reflective object sticking out of the corner, an old mirror. He began forming a plan. Nick stepped back toward the toolbox, feigning nervous compliance.
At least let me clean up the mess I've made, Derek. Let me pull the tarp back.
As Nick knelt to adjust the tarp, he discreetly grabbed the mirror from the toolbox. Using the flashlight's cracked lens to create a distraction, he angled the mirror to reflect the light from the overhead bulb. Nick raised the flashlight, aiming it at Derek. The cracked lens split the beam, momentarily blinding and distracting him with a sudden burst of light. As Derek instinctively stepped back, Nick lunged toward a nearby shelf, knocking over a stack of paint cans. The heavy cans tumbled down, causing Derek to stagger and drop the shotgun. Nick slammed the basement door shut and locked it from the outside, using a nearby chair to block the handle. Wasting no time, he pulled out his phone and called for backup. Authorities arrested Derek and seized the horrifying evidence from the basement. Inside the freezers were packages labeled as meat, but peeling back the layers revealed severed hands and feet, meticulously wrapped and disturbingly labeled. Even as the case was closed, Nick couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness of Silver Hollow ran deeper than his cousin's monstrous deeds. Nightmare House on the Hillside. A new beginning Lucy, a 7-year-old girl, moved with her family to an old suburban house. It was a historic home built in the mid-1800s. The house was 2 stories tall with a basement below. Down there was a locked door leading to water tanks used to heat the house. Only her mother and the landlord had the key. They warned her never to go near it. Lucy never understood why her room was always colder than the others, even though it was right above the basement. At night, she often heard strange creaking sounds, as if someone were walking on the floor, whispers, and distant footsteps pacing in the living room. The house was old and worn. She also frequently saw wasps emerging from the attic, swarming as if drawn to something. She wasn't the only one experiencing strange things. Her parents often heard footsteps late at night, pacing endlessly, but they dismissed it as nothing. One night, she woke up with an eerie feeling as if someone was in the room with her. Lucy turned over and saw a boy, his face hidden in the shadows. He wore old-fashioned clothes and stood near her desk. Lucy sat up in bed. The boy spoke, asking if she wanted to play with him. She refused, saying it was too late and she didn't want to get in trouble. His expression changed. He looked angry. In the blink of an eye, he vanished into the cold darkness of the room. Lucy ran to tell her mother, but she reassured her that it was just a dream. Still, Lucy couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with the house. The next night, it happened again, but this time, it was worse. She woke up, unable to move. But this time, it was someone else, a woman in a black dress. She stood on Lucy's bed, her bare feet pressing into the blanket, long nails cracked and jagged. The woman bent down, her tangled hair falling over Lucy's face. She couldn't see her features, her wild hair obscured them. Then the woman stared at her, with hollow, blackened eyes. Her breath, ice cold, brushed against Lucy's skin. Lucy sprang up, threw open the door, and rushed to her sister's room. Her baby sister was still asleep in her crib. She had to make sure she was safe. She turned back to the door and saw the woman slowly stepping toward her. As she passed the window, a flash of lightning struck outside. For a brief second, the woman vanished. With each flicker of light, she reappeared closer and closer. Lucy woke up drenched in sweat, trying to piece together what had just happened. She ran to her mother and told her everything. Her mother's face turned pale as Lucy spoke, but in the end, she simply said it was just a nightmare, a lie one she had been telling since they moved in. Within days, the family moved out. Lucy's mother never gave them a reason. It wasn't until years later that Lucy finally dared to ask. The landlord eventually admitted what had happened in that house long ago. A widowed mother and her 3 children had once lived there. Their family had been happy together. During the Civil War, the mother had become a widow, and she and her 3 children remained in the house for a long time. After her husband died in battle, her mind shattered. In a fit of madness, she killed everyone else in the family right there in the living room, before dragging them down to the water storage room in the basement, the very place they had been warned never to go near. This explained everything Lucy had experienced: the misplaced toys, the shifting objects in her room. The boy Lucy had seen was one of her children, still trapped in the house, searching for a companion or perhaps revenge. And the woman, the one who stood on her bed, was the mother, her spirit twisted by the horror she had committed. Lucy often wondered what would have happened if they had stayed in that house. Would they have become part of its story? Would the woman have done to them what she had done to her own children? She would never know. But sometimes, in the dead of night, she found herself thinking about that house on the hill and the dark secrets it held. Fake stalkers. This happened a few years ago. Liz was home alone for the weekend while her parents attended a wedding, and she had invited a friend over, Maya. Maya, who lived just behind Liz's house, agreed to come over. Liz prepared snacks and tea, looking forward to a fun and relaxing day. About 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. However, it wasn't a normal ring. The person at the door was pressing it urgently, as if in a hurry. When she reached the door and asked,
Who's there?
a rushed voice responded.
Maya.
When Liz opened the door, she saw Maya standing there, looking disheveled and breathless. She rushed inside, visibly shaking with fear. Liz quickly led her inside and handed her a glass of water, then asked what had happened. Maya explained that while walking to Liz's house, she had noticed a man staring at her, smiling. Although she tried to ignore him and keep walking, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was following her. She turned around to check if the man was still there, and he was following her. Panicked, she ran to Liz's house, hoping to lose him. But by the time she arrived, the man had vanished. Liz reassured her friend that she was safe inside. They carried on with their plans for the day, but Maya remained uneasy, unable to shake off the fear from her encounter. After a while, both girls got hungry and decided to order a pizza. About half an hour later, the doorbell rang. Liz assumed it was the pizza delivery, so she got up to answer it. Liz walked toward the door.
Who is it?
She called, gripping the doorknob.
Pizza delivery, ma'am.
Just as she was about to turn the knob, a piercing scream from upstairs shattered the silence. Maya suddenly screamed from upstairs.
Liz, don't open the door.
Her voice filled with panic. Maya rushed down the stairs, yanking Liz away from the door with terrifying force. Liz barely had time to process what was happening before she was pulled back. Startled and confused, she demanded to know what was going on. With fear in her eyes, Maya began explaining everything. She said she had looked out the window and saw the same man who had followed her earlier. Now, he was standing at the door, waiting for them to open it. She believed he had been stalking them and was impersonating the pizza delivery man. Liz hesitated, wondering if Maya was overreacting. Maybe she was just paranoid after all. It was nearly impossible to see his face clearly in the darkness. Maya gripped her wrist tightly, her face pale as she saw Liz stepping toward the door.
Liz, don't. I saw him. It's him. It's the same man.
She took a step toward the door. The man spoke.
I saw you run. Don't leave. Open the door and take your pizza.
Liz froze. The man's words sent a chill down her spine. Suddenly, she remembered. Earlier that night, while watching Netflix, she had seen something move outside before they even ordered food. A shadow, a flicker, just for a second. But she had ignored it. Maybe it had been him. Snapping back to reality, Liz realized the door was now shaking violently. Maya dragged Liz upstairs into a bedroom and locked the door. The two girls huddled together, listening in terror. The man started pounding on the door, screaming for them to open it. The banging and his increasingly deranged voice sent chills through them. Overwhelmed with fear, Liz immediately called the police. All they could do was sit there, crying and praying for help. After what felt like forever, they heard police sirens. Finally, the man was caught. Liz and Maya were escorted out safely. The police informed them that they had found the body of a murdered pizza delivery driver. His uniform jacket had been stolen, used as a disguise. They had no idea what his true intentions were, but they were lucky. If Maya hadn't recognized him in time, they both might have been his next unfortunate victims.